Oh, hi, Mr. Nathan Hockman, DA. How you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, the last time we talked, you were the candidate. I think I interviewed you twice. I know most of my subscribers and viewers, I would say 99 percentile, voted for you, so they're very happy. Can you give us a quick update? Has it been like around 150 days since you've been in office?
Yeah, it's been about 150 days, and so far so good. You know, I started off having to get and restore and rebuild the trust of three main groups in the criminal justice system. First, my own prosecutors. I've got over 750 prosecutors across this county. In addition, by the way, about 1,300 other investigators and support staff. And that trust had been seriously broken by the prior administration. So much so that 98% of those prosecutors voted to support the recall of my predecessor, Mr. Gascon. So I had to rebuild their trust and work to do it every single day. What I say to them basically is that the greatest asset of a DA's office are not the computers or the cases or the courtrooms, but the prosecutors and the people who do all the hard work. So my job is, as a DA, is to maximize the greatest resource, which is them. They need training done, resources done, credit for a good job, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so I've done my best to rebuild the morale amongst my own ranks, and so far so good. Mm-hmm. The second relationship I had to repair was the DA's relationship with law enforcement, the tens of thousands of law enforcement officers who are doing a very dangerous and difficult job very well, for almost all of them, every single day. So the prior DA was more interested in prosecuting the police than partnering with them. I've sent the opposite message. I said, basically, look, you go ahead and bring us really good cases, and we will give a fair shot to every single case you bring us. So no longer do I have the policies that my predecessor had, where he said certain crimes and certain criminals were off limits. Whether it was juveniles committing misdemeanors, that's people under 18 stealing under $950, that he refused to prosecute. Gangs, he refused to apply the gang enhancement for violent acts, gun enhancements, whole variety of other crimes. I basically said those policy restrictions are gone. I said to law enforcement, do a great job and bring us great cases, and we will give a fair shot to every case. Mm-hmm. Third group, though, is victims. Victims have been abandoned by my predecessor. For instance, when it came time for a victim family that had a son or a daughter murdered, and they're going to confront the murderer at a parole hearing, for decades, the prosecutor's office used to send a prosecutor with the victim family so that they could have not just support, but the prosecutor got access to the information being considered by the parole board so they could make the best argument on behalf of the victim family. My predecessor cut that off on his day one. I brought that back on my day one.
Mm-hmm. We just couldn't help but think that the criminals had their advocate. So it was like, it was almost like another hurdle that we had to overcome. But you finally came to office, thankfully. I can't help but notice you have so many awards behind you. Yeah. Okay. So you've been.
That's because I've spent 35 years in the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. So periodically, someone will send you a nice letter or give you a plaque. I'm much more interested in seeing whether or not I can help people than getting a plaque or a thank you. The thank you is actually, whatever individual or family or group or association you're able to help, and they could come up to you and they give you a big hug or a big handshake. That's the only thanks I need, not the plaque.
Was there anything positive that George Gascon has been doing? You went to office 150 days in almost. Was there anything positive, or do you think you can't find anything positive? From 1 to 100, it was all negative.
Well, what's interesting is that Mr. Gascon, in a positive way, had identified a number of problems with the system. These are problems often with whether or not the system was operating fairly for underrepresented people, for different races and ethnicities. The problem was his solutions are what I disagree with strongly. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of believing that you can prioritize public safety, but also deal with real and effective criminal justice reform at the same time. So for instance, Mr. Gascon actually continued Miss Lacey, the prior DA's conviction review unit. And that's a unit that was set up to look at old convictions where evidence has come to light recently that the person might actually be factually innocent. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Gascon continued it for Miss Lacey. I've continued it for Mr. Gascon. And we've actually released 3 people since I've been in office, less than 6 months, who the facts came out years and years after their conviction that they were actually factually innocent. And once that came out across my desk, I worked very quickly to get them out of prison.
Is there where the Menendez brothers also come into play? It sounds like it.
Yeah, no, I've had to deal with that case as well.
And that sounded very political too, because he opened this case, reopened it right before the election was happening, and he was way down in the polls. And it came out of nowhere, and there was a Netflix special at the same time, and it just sounded very fabricated.
You know, the timing of his decision was very political. But once the case was on my desk, we did the hard work. We looked through 50,000 pages of trial transcripts from 2 months long trials. We looked at thousands of pages of prison files. We reviewed hundreds of hours of videotaped trial testimony. I spoke over 3 hours with the Menendez family members myself. I spoke to their defense counsel, prior prosecutors, law enforcement. So we did the hard work to come up with a position that basically said that the Menendezes were not ready for resentencing. Not that they would never be ready, but right now they had not fully come clean with all their crimes, cover-ups, and deceits, but had perpetrated those for over 30 years. And when and if they decided to finally come clean, then at that point they could be ready for resentencing.
Do you believe they were really sexually abused by their dad? I mean, to me, when I watched the entire drama, I watched documentaries about him, and I just don't understand it. I just can't fathom it, how the kids would just violently kill both of their parents. It just didn't make sense. I think it seemed like they were spoiled brats to me. I just don't understand it. What say you, sir?
So what we looked at is what defense did the Menendez brothers actually use at trial to try and get off these killings. And interestingly, it was not sexual abuse. In fact, when they were asked on the stand, is the reason that you killed your mom and your dad because you were sexually abused? The answer was no. And so they said, so what's the reason? Because we believed that our mom and our dad were both going to kill us that night of August 20th, 1989. So we basically had to kill them first. Now, that self-defense defense, we prove was a total lie. Whether it was buying shotguns 2 days beforehand, a pre-planned alibi, staging the killings to look like a mafia hit, including shooting the parents in the kneecaps after they were dead, methodically picking up all the evidence, coming up with it, trying to come up with an alibi, denying their culpability for the killings right afterwards. We show that the self-defense defense is a lie, and a lie they've been telling for the last 30 years. Yeah. So with that was basically our point to the Menendez brothers. Come clean with all your lies. Show us that there's a reason we should be able to trust you if you get back out in society. And if and when you do that, we'll reconsider our opposition to your resentencing.
Mm-hmm. It just didn't make. So the sexual abuse thing, it came out. It came out later, right? Not initially.
So yeah, the sexual abuse, when the Menendezes were first talking to their psychiatrist, who ended up recording secretly some of these tapes or some of those sessions, they didn't bring up sexual abuse as a reason they killed their parents. They didn't bring up self-defense as a reason they killed their parents. In fact, for instance, with their mother, they basically said that they killed their mom because they didn't want her to be a witness to killing their dad. They said that they thought her mom was suffering because the dad had had an affair on her, and they thought they were doing her a favor, almost a mercy killing, by putting her out of her misery. Those are the reasons the Menendez brothers initially gave for killing their mother. They later changed that drastically at trial to saying that we thought our mother and our father were both going to kill us that night, so we had to kill them first.
Yeah, it just sounds so manipulative. To me, it sounds all just manipulating games by them. These two, I just don't. I have a fishy feeling about them. But why are the liberal and the uber liberal side and some media members so hell-bent on seeing them let go? Why is that?
I'm convinced because they only have some of the facts. Because if you think, for instance, that the sexual abuse evidence didn't come out at trial, and the only reason that the jury convicted the Menendezes is because they didn't even know about the sexual abuse, which is the narrative the defense likes to tell, then you think, oh, well, they served 35 years for killing their parents. That's enough time. But if you understand that at the second trial, Eric Menendez and Lyle Menendez presented 2 months of evidence on sexual abuse, even though their ultimate defense was self-defense. And if you understand that the jury rejected their self-defense excuse, the evidence relating to sexual abuse, they heard it, but they rejected it because they saw that the other evidence was overwhelming to show that the Menendezes deliberately, willfully, and with premeditation killed their parents in cold blood. So if you understand that, then you don't have as much sympathy for the Menendez brothers having to spend the rest of their lives in jail than you do if you think all that evidence was excluded and they got an unfair trial 30 years ago.
Yeah. And didn't they also have like a house party right after they murdered their parents?
Well, I don't know if it was a house party, but they certainly spent a whole lot of their parents' money on Rolexes, fancy cars. In fact, if you ever want to look up something interesting, there's a basketball player named Mark Jackson.
I know him.
Jackson was a rookie in 1989. The rookie basketball card has a picture of Mark Jackson at Madison Square Garden, and courtside seats that you can see on the card are the two Menendez brothers in New York sitting courtside in 1989 after their parents were dead, having spent the insurance money on these courtside seats.
Yeah, I think it's all the way around liars. I mean, they seem liars to me, but I would have convicted him if I was in the jury seat, but of all the things that I know. It seems like they had some behavior issues too, even though they had a chance to get off. So the comprehensive risk assessment, they depicted troubling behavior from both brothers. This is pretty recent, right? That they were getting these cell phones illegally?
Yeah, so they came out, the Board of Parole came out with a comprehensive risk assessment for each Menendez brother that was prepared by a board-certified psychologist and a supervisor as well. And they basically elevated the risk of violence rating for the Menendezes from low to moderate, based on the fact that they've engaged in deceitful conduct, illegal deceitful conduct in the prior year as they're literally awaiting resentencing. So in other words, rather than be on your best behavior so that you can try and impress a judge or the parole board or the governor and say we really deserve to be trusted on the outside because we've learned our lessons, the Menendez brothers went ahead and engaged in more illegal conduct, deceitful conduct. Eric Menendez admitted to purchasing drugs while he's been inside the jail, over the last year.
So those things, what I don't understand is, I'm from South Korea originally. That kind of thing can never happen in a jail, like some kind of illegal, like drugs smuggling in. But I watch it all the time on HBO dramas, and it's like, even today there was a news broke. Was it in Louisiana that there were inmates running? They found a hole in a bath. Was it a toilet? And then they ran away. And they even wrote it, it's so easy to get out of here or something. I just don't understand it. We never hear these kind of stories in South Korea, drug smuggling inside. It's just unbelievable what's going on here in American, incarceration system.
It's both a different incarceration system and a different level of respect for the law.
Probably, yeah.
In
human rights issue and
Korea
stuff, right?
Or Singapore or some of the Asian nations, if you commit certain crimes, the penalties are very extreme. And as a result, people don't commit the crimes in the numbers that they commit them here. Also, with a much more diverse population, the connections that bind people sometimes are very, few and far between amongst various groups that are quite honestly strangers to each other in this society.
Got it. I understand. So this is Lyle Menendez who said you seem to say that he has some narcissistic tendencies.
And it wasn't me that said it. It was a board
Okay.
certified psychologist that said it.
All right. Okay. So what's going to happen with this case? The judge
Yeah.
seems to side with them, right? Not you.
The judge decided that he was going to change the sentence from life without the possibility of parole to life with the possibility of parole.
Mm-hmm.
Now it switches over to the parole board. They're going to have a parole hearing at some point. After that parole hearing, they're going to decide either to recommend to the governor that the Menendez's brothers be put on parole, or they might recommend that they shouldn't. And what that would mean is that the Menendez brothers in a few years can apply for the next parole hearing and try to convince the parole board that they're now ready to be let out. Mm-hmm. If and when it eventually gets to the governor's desk, he can either agree with the parole board, disagree with the parole board, or send it back for the full parole board members, all I think there's over 10 of them, to decide a particular case.
Okay, so this defense lawyer, Mark Garagos, isn't he like a celebrity lawyer? He defended Michael Jackson before. Does this bring more attention? Does it change the system? I mean, somehow, does it change the perception, I would say, for the people or for the system right now?
So what I put Mark Garagos aside. Mark Garagos, he can be a very good lawyer, and he can be a very unprofessional lawyer. Mm-hmm. I will respond when he's being professional, and I will negate and try not to even address his personal attacks on me when he's being unprofessional.
He's been doing that, yeah.
Right. That being said, what I hope the Menendez case does is it actually attracts people to get interested in the criminal justice system. There's a whole bunch of young people, especially, who have gotten into the Menendez case. And I think that's great. I just hope they don't stop with the Menendez case. I hope they start following a lot of criminal justice cases, get interested, get involved, because the system will be much better off if they're involved than if they have no knowledge or stay on the sidelines.
I understand. Okay. I just don't think that. I think they murdered, their parents. I don't believe the sexual abuse thing because
we know they murdered their parents. Even they had to admit it.
Yeah. But
the question is basically why, mm-hmm. and what justifications they're offering. And again, we've shown that the one that they've had at trial and kept since then, this self-defense defense, is a total lie.
The whole picture changed because of the potential father sexually abusing his kids, right? That's why people wanted to kind of dig this up again. That was my perception.
That was certainly one of the reasons that's been put out, mostly by the Menendez brothers, as to why people should care about their case 30 years later. I care about the case because I have to care about all the cases that end up on my desk. And so we put a lot of work in the Menendez case, but we're going to be putting a lot of work into all those cases that end up on my desk.
Got it. So how is Proposition 36 going so far?
So far, so good. Proposition 36, we've been able to finally go after chronic thieves and chronic drug users. And by the way, I mean illegal drug users like meth, heroin, fentanyl, because to even trigger a Proposition 36 felony, you have to have 2 prior convictions for theft or 2 prior convictions for illegal drug use before a Proposition 36 felony can even be considered. Mm-hmm. So it really has gone after chronic and repeat thieves and drug users. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to, again, remove a lot of these people and arrest them and send a very strong message that you can't just go into stores day in and day out, steal whatever you want, and nothing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Did you see this article? There has been some articles that's really going after you ever since. I expected this to happen because Los Angeles being so uber liberal at this point. But when they voted for you, I don't think they're that uber liberal. But there's this op-ed that came out from Vanguard News Group. I never heard of them before, but it says, your zero tolerance crusade returns us to mass incarceration. And it was just bashing you after every sentence, like going after you. Proposition 36, like a revival of 3 strikes, you're out. It's going to. Well, what say you to this?
So that particular reporter has a narrative. And
David
the
Greenwald.
narrative is that I'm some tough on law prosecutor who doesn't care about the facts and the law, and I just want to put as many people in jail as possible. That person has never listened or spoken to me ever. And what I tell people is, look, I reject extreme policies. Mass incarceration on one hand, decarceration on the other hand, which is basically saying that we don't care what the facts and the law are if we're going to make a political determination that we're just not going to enforce certain laws. I go back to what I call the hard middle. And the reason it's hard is you got to do the hard work. You got to look at each case individually. Look at the individual defendant and the defendant's backgrounds, the crime committed, and the impact on the victim to determine who the true threats are to our public safety. And those are often the repeat offenders who need to be behind bars and the ones that aren't. The first-time nonviolent offender still has to pay a debt back to society if they violate society's laws. But that's where community service, that's where restitution, pay it back if you stole something, or if you have a serious drug addiction that got you to do that, commit that crime, we'll give you a choice. You can go to prison, or you can get into an 18-month rehab program that if you finish one day at a time, we'll give you a certificate and wipe the crime off your record.
Uh-huh.
This is the hard middle approach. And reporters like that one up in Vanguard, Davis, or wherever that person is located, they don't care about the balanced approach that I'm taking. They focus on the fact that I say I'm going to go after the chronic repeat offenders because they haven't gotten the message, and they're terrorizing small businesses. They're destroying the quality of life in our communities. And these folks who criticize that offer no solution to that, literally no solution. And if they're okay giving out their personal address and having these people go in their home, take whatever they want, leave, defecate in their front yard, and then wave goodbye, at least they'll be consistent. And they should put their home address out and invite anyone who wants to come over to come over.
It sounds like
doing that, then they basically need to go ahead and work with people like me to come up with real solutions that can prioritize public safety, while, again, enacting real and effective criminal justice reform.
it seems like this individual, this journalist, he's missing George Gascon a whole lot, which I don't understand at all. So I think the jail, we need to increase jail. Is it too, am I being too harsh? Because that's how I see it. I mean, when they commit crime, they have to be jailed. I mean, I think I read a lot of articles the past, over the weekend, to prepare this interview with you too. But it seems like the people who are against you, the journalists who are against you, they seem to think that this is too harsh. It's an easy solution, just putting them in jail. We should kind of care about their upbringing. But, I mean, we can't just be their therapist. That's what I think.
So I don't mind at all people criticizing anything we're doing, as long as they offer solutions that will actually try and make the situation better. So do I think that people who've come from dysfunctional families and end up committing crimes, that we need to do something with dysfunctional families in the first place? Absolutely. Do I think people who have made it through an education system and come out with effectively an 8th grade education, or they're at an 8th grade level when they graduate 12th grade, and we think that somehow is a path for success in society? Of course it isn't. Do I have an issue with the fact that we don't have enough vocational training schools to give someone a basically marketable skill in our society? Absolutely. Do I have a huge issue with drugs in our society and the amount of addicted people, the amount of people who are basically selling drugs to make ends meet, and they think that's somehow a good thing? Got a huge problem with that. Do I have a problem with the seriously mentally ill, the ones that want to get help and we are able to provide them with an opportunity? We are meeting our obligations. The ones that want to get help and we don't have enough beds for them, we're failing. And the ones that don't want to get help but still want to commit crimes, we need to have proper spaces to put them in so that they then can't deal and hurt society. So I am a full believer that the problems of criminal justice are not solved necessarily by locking everybody up.
But it doesn't mean that George Gascon was very diligent about going to these communities and improving that. That never happened. It got worse, actually. So their argument does not compute.
The purist argument doesn't work. Works really nice in an academic journal, but it wasn't working on the street. And George Gascon proved that. What I'm willing to do is try a whole bunch of things. If the ones that are working, we'll scale up. The ones that aren't working, we'll pivot from and see if we can find better solutions. People on both extremes, whether it's the extreme right or extreme left, they get locked and loaded into their political viewpoints. They disregard facts that contradict it, and they think they're probably doing a great job, which they aren't.
Yeah, I think it's a broken home issue. I talked about it with some, Larry Elder and some conservative and even some liberal people too. And they all, in private, they all agree that it's a family issue, that most of these crimes are committed with broken families who's just brought up with a single mom who doesn't have a dad or even a stepdad. And then I think, if you don't have a dad at home, your mom can't contain, your teenage son, they grow up, they hang out with friends, and it's easy for them to go to the sideline, so to speak.
Well, I think you're right. I use the concept of a dysfunctional family because I've seen plenty of people raised by grandparents, plenty of people raised by just one
Actually,
parent.
a lot of Koreans too. A lot of Korean immigrants here. Both of their parents were too busy working in a laundromat or liquor store or where have you, and it's up to usually the grandmas who brought them. So they have this affinity to
I've
grandmas.
seen aunts and uncles pinch in, and kids are able to be raised. It's not the traditional functional family, but it's not a dysfunctional family. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. If you look at the backgrounds of people who end up in the criminal justice system as serious offenders, all too often they came from completely dysfunctional families. And quite honestly, if you looked at where they came from, to get them on a different path would have been extremely difficult. Not impossible, but really difficult. And then by not being on a different path, they end up in the criminal justice system, often creating a whole lot of victims in their wake.
So what say you to the answer? I wouldn't say the answer, but the better solution is, it's sad to say, and it pains me to say, but it seems like more jails. Because a lot of my friends think, most of my friends are Democrats too, me living in Los Angeles, and they say that more jails is the most realistic solutions to what's happening.
Well, here's what I'm advocating, so it's crystal clear what I'm advocating. Right now, the main jail in Los Angeles County holds over 4,000 people. It was built the year of my birth, 1963. It had a 30 or 40-year shelf life, which means it should have been destroyed and torn down in 2003. So it's 22 years past its shelf life. It's dangerous for the jailers. It's dangerous for the inmates. You can't do rehab programming inside of it. And it has no real facilities for the mentally ill. And there's over 4,000 mentally ill people in the LA County jails every night. Mm-hmm. So there have been plans on the drawing board to tear it down and build a state-of-the-art mental health treatment center that would have 5,000 beds, 1,000 of them for mentally ill patients. It was actually, the groundbreaking was supposed to be in 2020, but our county board of supervisors had a political change of winds. They adopted a care first, jails last philosophy. They torpedoed this project. They paid a $70 million breakup fee to the contractor. They promised us that they would get on the solution if they didn't build this big facility, and they've absolutely failed to deliver anything that gets close to creating a new jail and proper jail system that can not only house inmates, but offer them rehab programs in the process. So now at this point, what used to cost $2.2 billion is probably closer to $3 billion. But I'm going to put I'm going to highlight this issue every time I talk, because if we don't get building this thing as soon as possible, and I'm talking about state of the art, Norway would be jealous of us type of facility, then we'll have this conversation in 5 years and 10 years. The situation will get absolutely dire on our system busting at the guts with too many people that we can't take care of. and we'll be in an emergency situation very soon.
You were saying that it was supposed to break ground back in 2020, but still not, and probably not in the near future, right?
Absolutely.
Are these 5 supervisors? Are they all liberal, very uber liberal in your opinion? I know some are.
Catherine Barger's not. Catherine Barger is very sensible. She's I think she's a registered Republican, but she's very sensible.
Okay.
Janice Hahn actually tried to get these projects launched in 2020, but she hasn't been able to overcome the other 3 very liberal people who've adopted this care first, jails last philosophy that has resulted in us having nothing on the drawing boards right now in 2025.
D.A. Hochman, how come all of them are just female? We don't have a single male county supervisor.
I think we're lucky to have 5 females on as a board of supervisors. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they're male, female, whatever their gender, their orientation is, whatever their race, their ethnicity, their religion. I couldn't care less.
Okay.
What I care about is, are they good at their job? Are they able to see beyond the horizon where the trend lines are going? Can they spend money wisely? Do they hire people who have the experience to actually get stuff done? Mm-hmm. I want people who are great at their job. I could care less what they look like.
Okay, D.A. Hochman, I was just saying that for DEI purpose, okay? So I thought that there were some, I was just joking a little bit, yeah. You've been hitting the news wave recently about that you wanted to crack down on the, illegal immigrants coming over to the States and committing a lot of criminal activity.
Right. So here's what I've said.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, what I've said about illegal immigrants is, look, federal immigration policy, that's up to the federal government, the Department of Justice. But if a documented or undocumented person comes into LA County and commits crimes here, we are absolutely going to prosecute them. We'll arrest them, we'll prosecute them, we'll punish them. And that is our job. That's what the DA's office is all about. That particular quote you talk about got actually misinterpreted. I was on the San Bernardino.
I think a lot of people praised it, but it's okay.
Here's the funny part. I was on the San Bernardino, Los Angeles County line. And what I was saying is that in the old days being the last 4 years, criminals would come from San Bernardino into LA County. They would literally cross the border. I referred to it as the border between LA County and San Bernardino County, thinking that nothing was going to happen if they committed crimes in LA County. And what I was announcing was that there is a new day and age. The fun is over. If you want to go ahead and steal or rob or commit crimes in LA County, you will be prosecuted. Mm-hmm. And that was the message I was sending to anybody that thinks that LA County was all fun and games for the last 4 years. That fun and games is over.
Yeah, and I think it was a good post that you posted. But what do you think about the sanctuary law situation in Los Angeles? The city protects pretty much illegal immigrants, undocumented.
Well, the
would this be like a hindrance to you?
Sanctuary law in LA City is virtually no different than the sanctuary state law that was passed, which is SB 54 in 2017 and affirmed on appeal after a Trump presidency challenge back in 2018. So that law has been in effect for, 8 years now. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 major carve-outs on that law that you should know about. That if you are if you committed a violent crime, the violent crime was excluded from the prohibition of law enforcement talking to federal immigration authorities. Mm-hmm. So if you commit those crimes, law enforcement can call up federal immigration authorities and not violate the sanctuary state law. Second thing is, if the federal immigration authorities get a warrant for the arrest of any particular person because they now know they've been convicted in the state side, that warrant will be honored by every law enforcement officer in the state. So these 2 carve-outs already existed and have existed for the last 8 years that have really allowed the federal immigration officials to go ahead and pick up convicted felons from our system.
Mm-hmm. Is it really true that the illegal border crossing from our southern border had dropped almost 99%? I mean, President Trump talked about it, but is it true? I mean, you must know.
I don't follow
Okay.
I don't get access to any of the numbers beyond that the news media gets.
Okay.
I don't have any private information about that.
Got it. Okay. Back to Prop 36. Governor Gavin Newsom, he refused to fund it, right?
Well,
is there any update regarding that?
Governor Newsom came out against Proposition 36 when it was on the ballot. And because it wasn't his proposition, he feels no obligation to go ahead and create the funding that would allow the treatment beds to be built and staffed to give these people with either usually serious drug addictions, to give them a pathway to getting their drug addiction under control so that they don't commit more crimes. Mm-hmm. I think that Governor Newsom cares about safety, at least he says it very often. Mm-hmm. Clearly, people who are committing crimes, who are drug addicted, need a solution more than just locking them up. Yeah. You got to do something to help them break that cycle of drug addiction. So if Governor Newsom's actually serious about safety and serious about caring about people who are going through drug addictions and trying to get them help, then Governor Newsom, what I would tell you is show me the money.
Okay.
And if he shows us the money, we'll know he's serious about it. If he doesn't show us the money, we'll know he's just playing politics.
Okay. I thought he would be a little bit more moderate because now he started his own podcast and, inviting conservatives, and he even kind of was against transgender issue, surprisingly. So I thought he would definitely fund it, but I was kind of surprised that he when I saw this report that he's kind of being wishy-washy regarding this. And, so the smash and grab, did it drop dramatically ever since you got into office?
You know what? It's still a little early to look at the trend lines. Mm-hmm. I mean, we believe anecdotally from what we're hearing is that the people who are stealing are starting to get the message and that they'll be held accountable. Mm-hmm. We'll see probably at I'm guessing the year mark when we'll be able to make a good comparison. Because both my coming in and Proposition 36 coming in at the same time, hopefully will show a serious reduction in theft crimes.
Mm-hmm. D. Hockman, I can't help but notice on your left-hand side, is that a DC District Attorney comic book thing that's going on there? Is that a comic book?
Yeah, someone gave me a comic book, a DC comic book. Apparently, there used to be a comic book character called Mr. District Attorney.
Okay, got it.
So I guess you used to buy comic books and follow Mr. District Attorney when he did all the different cases. Mm-hmm. So someone got me one of the covers of the comic book.
Did you hear anything from the Korean American community so far? That they're thankful to you?
The Korean American Prosecutors Association has been enormously helpful. Yes. Working with my office. Mm-hmm. I had a chance to meet, some of the head prosecutors from the Korean government came out here, who were, we managed to spend some time together, really good people, and figuring out, again, how best we can work on any international case that involves the Korean government or more locally with the Korean Consul General, who I've also had a chance to meet, terrific guy. We're focusing on issues that Korean Americans face in Koreatown and other parts of this county. Mm-hmm. It's a whole range of issues from residential burglaries to retail theft to human trafficking to fentanyl poisoning. They face a lot of these issues, and we're putting in as many resources as we can to help the Korean American community deal with these problems.
Mm-hmm. We were worried about George Soros's money regarding against George Gascon. That I think he was handpicked by Soros and he got tons of money, and that's how he got elected. And then he beat the recall. Wasn't it like 2 times that he beat the recall? And
he didn't beat the recall as much as the recall didn't get enough signatures to even get on the ballot.
Oh, okay. So some of the constituents have told me that they're worried that he might do a comeback, that Soros would, kind of, he's on the back seat right now, but his son, Alex Soros, he said that he's even worse than his dad. So,
again, the Soroses are very practical, I think.
Oh, okay.
And they don't back people who are going to lose. Mm-hmm. So they didn't back Gascon. They didn't back a lot of prosecutors that they backed in 2020 who ended up losing races in 2024. Mm-hmm. So again, they had certainly an agenda. They played out the agenda through these prosecutors. The agenda didn't work, didn't make us more safe, didn't make a society, more just. And now hopefully people like myself are coming in that are not, people who believe in mass incarceration, but people who have a very balanced approach on how to achieve criminal justice humanely, but firmly in our society.
Okay. So what are the most important results you've achieved in the first approximately 150 days in DA, in your opinion? And what's the most trying, what's the most difficult task you are facing right now?
So important results, I can point to a whole number of cases that we've gotten convictions, long sentences. We recently had a press conference on going after 25 cases involving animal cruelty. We had press conferences about fentanyl poisoners. We had press conferences about human traffickers, retail theft. We just had a press conference in front of a 7-Eleven. Talking about retail theft. But the challenges are huge. I talk about the jail challenge is one. The mental health laws in our county don't make much sense and how they're dealing with people with serious mental illnesses. You've got issues with our juvenile system that it's such a poorly run system. They're having to close down facilities because they can't run them at a legal level. Yet we got a lot of juveniles who need a place to be incarcerated while they're either waiting for their trials or after they get tried while they're serving their sentences. So we got a lot of problems and big challenges, but the morale, I think, is back. I've worked very hard in getting the morale back amongst prosecutors, law enforcement, and victims. And, we're hopefully going to be able to achieve some great things over the next couple of years.
Yeah, the jail system kind of worries me. Who do you think you should... how can we make that happen? Like you said, that was supposed to happen already back in 2020, but now it's not even in the plan. It would be even a miracle to start it in 2030, right? According to what I'm listening to.
Yeah, Michael, the only way to do it is for you, for the media, for the public, for me, to keep the pressure on the Board of Supervisors. They are the gatekeepers to the money, and the money is needed to build these jails. So we will keep the pressure on them to make them understand that this is a priority issue, that, you've ducked this issue for 60 years for the most part. And you can blame all the other Board of Supervisors that you want for not dealing with it. But as long as you sit on the Board of Supervisors, you own this problem. I own this problem. Yeah. You and the public listening to this own this problem. And so either we can sit back and kick the can down the road, which is what's been done for decades, or we can finally deal with it. That's our choice. I'll make my own choice, which is to deal with it. And I hope others make a similar choice to deal with it as well.
Yeah, this is for inmate human rights, I would think, right? So I think the George Gascon should have been all over this too. It's a better facility for them, for the community. So I just don't understand. So among the five of them, who are kind of supporting you on this and know this? Does it? It's not registering their head right now. All of them.
Catherine Barger is, one of my chief, not my chief supporter. She's one of the chief supporters of this idea that we need to build something and not just tear down Men's Central Jail. Janice Hahn often says a lot of positive things in this regard. The other three Board of Supervisors don't seem to be interested in building something that will actually work. And let me leave you with this concept on this topic that I read many, many years ago, a philosopher that said, you don't judge the quality of a civilization by the quality of its museums. You judge it by the quality of its prisons.
Exactly.
And on that metric, our LA County society is a complete failure.
Right. So you need federal funding too? Would federal funding come in?
Federal funding helps. State funding definitely helps. But if we don't get enough federal or state funding, we're going to probably have to just do it ourselves.
Got it. Any last words you want to say to our viewers, sir?
This job has both been fascinating, exhausting, thrilling, You get to have a place at the table with the major issues that our society faces, good and bad. And it's an honor to have been elected to this position. I do my best every single day to confront these problems head on, to offer hopefully smart solutions to them, and then learn as we enact these different programs what's working and what's not. And the stuff that's working we'll keep going on, and the stuff that's not we'll stop and pivot.
Mm-hmm. When is the next election? Just wanted to know.
For me, 2028.
Is it 2028? And that will be your last one, right? I mean, for this, the 2-term, right?
Here's the thing about the district attorney's office: there are no term limits.
There are no term limits. Oh, okay, so we would like to have you for a long time. Better than much better than Gascon. So I've been hearing from my from my subscribers and even constituents around here. They've been a fan of yours, and many of them decided to stay here. Some of them were really seriously considering to leave because they thought that Gascon had would get reelected because they were so disappointed of him not being recalled, but they decided to stay.
Well, I very much appreciate their decision to stay because quite candidly, it's only with the public working with law enforcement and the DA's office that gives us a chance to offer real solutions to all these different problems. So thank you for all your help in getting the word out. Mm-hmm. Thank all your listeners and viewers for paying attention to these important issues. And again, I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Okay, thank you very much, D.A. Hockman. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.